Hey everybody, this is Patty. Welcome to the witching hour, the time of the day when the veil is thin and we've got magic. We have some beautiful magic for us today. Let's get to know her together. She is an author, she is an astrologer, and she is Aubrey Houdeshell. Welcome, Aubrey. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Patty. I'm so excited to be here and chat about all things astrology.
All things astrology. Yes, you've got all sorts of things and decks and books. But let's talk. I'm really intrigued with your brand new book, right? Called Stellar Sex. Right. Turn up the heat with erotic astrology. I mean, that sounds like a book everybody should want to read. So tell us a little bit about this.
Sure. Yeah. So it is a book all about the intersection of sex and astrology. Love and relationships, right? Really being one of the main, if not the main subject that people always want to get readings about.
Yeah.
Over time in my experience with clients, we obviously started to also look into sex and how does that show up in the birth chart. And over time, I've sort of developed it to be this whole birth chart approach, I'll say, branch that kind of points to the different ways that our romantic and sexual needs, desires, energy manifest according to our birth chart placement. So I wrote a book about it.
That is right. Great. Because I'm not an astrologer because it's the not smart part of my brain, but I love astrology. I have honestly never put together astrology and sensuality or sex before. So Libras think about sex differently than, say, a Virgo or a Cancer or a Leo.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. So, Venus, the being the main partnership planet that we look to in the birth chart, that speaks to the type of lover we are, right? The things that we value and are attracted to, our own sort of romantic style. And it can also point to sex being sort of a fundamental part of our relationship, right? And then the other partnership planet is Mars, which is actually the planet of sex. And so that was kind of where I started, right? How did these two placements sort of meet up and combine and show up in, our romantic and sexual connections? And again, just through like experience and starting to kind of unravel that with my clients. Kind of got really into like, how did the signs influence this and tend to show up? And, I just got a lot of really positive feedback from people about that. And it turned into, starting to have people tell me like, hey, this is like the most fulfilling, like interesting, unique reading I've ever got. A lot of people do like sun sign compatibility when they're thinking about astrology. And I was like, well, it's more than that. Right. So this book is, like I said, kind of that holistic approach and is more about learning your own kind of energy according to your birth chart, and then being able to kind of go out and show up in your other relationships.
So in your partner, so you might understand your partner better, partners thorough better because they're this or they're that. I love that. I know you I just lost that whole question in mind. You emphasize avoiding gendered frameworks. How do you keep your language and practices inclusive of all orientations in
Yeah,
this?
I love
Because
that
this is
question
in
so
the
much.
years of he, she, they, who, and
That's exactly right. Yeah. So I love that question. My background, my educational background is actually in linguistics. And so language is something I'm very passionate about. Patty.
say that sentence again. I'm hanging up on someone. Okay.
Okay. Language is actually something I'm very passionate about, right? And I think, being intentional in our language to make it as inclusive as possible is helpful as well, because obviously you want things to be accessible and inclusive. And so the only book that I had found that sort of existed out there that talked about the sextrology topic is literally titled Sextrology. It's a little bit older of a book at this point, And they very much divide it into like the Aries man, the Aries woman. And that is something I wanted to stray from. And so I intentionally wrote it with, gender neutral language, right? So instead of saying he, she, it's they, theirs, them. Um, yeah.
That's I love that, especially now where everybody's learning to do that. It's still a conscious thing that they So you have another book called Stellar Sex. No, I mean called the Cosmic Symposium. This one's so how do these relate together? Are you revisiting it on a more intimate framework or lens of this, or do they go together at all?
Oh, they don't go together at all. I mean, the only way they really relate to one another is they're both astrology books, right? So, Stellar Sex, like I said, focusing on intimacy and eroticism and all of that. But the Cosmic Symposium is purely about the planets. In astrology, has nothing to do with the signs. It's more of an archetypal exploration into what all the different planets sort of mean and represent, and how we can not only begin to understand them, but can begin to develop a relationship with them, right? And to start to integrate those energies and our placements, more fully into our lives. So, yeah, they relate because they're astrology books, and they relate because my goal with both of them is to help give people self knowledge, right? But as far as their topics, they are, yeah, not related at all.
Completely different going into astrology. Okay. I know in your work, you really do emphasize, which is my thing too, personal empowerment and integration into things. So can astrology really help people do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's like one of the more powerful avenues, in fact, to help people do that. The amount of information that you can sort of extract from the birth chart is sort of incredible, right? I think we can extract more information from the birth chart than most people are aware of. I will speak for myself and say that learning astrology and my own birth chart definitely helped me to understand myself better, and that is often the feedback, that I get from other astrologers, clients, friends, family, right, who really have taken the time to start diving into their birth charts.
That is beautiful. And I'm gonna sneeze. Wait, I was gonna sneeze. I'm good. Okay. So how did this come about? Has astrology always been one of your major things? Did you start this young? How did your path bring you here?
So I have always been a person that's very interested in kind of all of the different avenues that do help us to better understand ourselves. I've done like the Myers Briggs and the Enneagram and, all those things. And I've sort of always very casually been interested in astrology, right? Like I'm sort of always known I was a Libra and my mom and dad were both Leos, but around the age of 21, I was at a girlfriend's house. I remember very distinctly being at her house and she's like, "Oh, have you ever looked at your birth chart?" And I was like, "I already know I'm a Libra. I don't like, yeah, I know about that." And she's like, "No, no, your sun sign is just sort of like one placement. You have a whole chart with all these other placements." And I was just like, "What are you talking about?" So she sat me down on her couch and we pulled up my birth chart on Cafe Astrology. And that was sort of my first introduction to the chart. And when you go on Cafe Astrology, it sort of populates a big old report for you to read. And I just sat on the couch for like the next hour and a half going through everything that report had to say. And my mind was like absolutely blown, right? I was like, they know all of these things about me. And I was like, look, and then after that. So then I started going around to all my friends and being like, let's look at your chart and let's see what it says and whatever. And it's just sort of snowballed from there over time. So.
It is amazing to me. You get a reading done, it's like, wow. So in putting that into sex, do you suggest to people where your blocks are or where your strengths are? Or is it just
Yeah.
suggestions?
But yeah, I mean, all of the above, right? So, of course, it's always tailored to, why are you here? What motivated you to come get this reading? What is it that you're sort of looking to understand? But yeah, I think in my experience, helping people to understand, like, here's what you really need from a partner or partners. right? Here's how you show up and show your love and desire. Here's what you need physically, emotionally, whatever, right? And that really helps people to, I think, be honest, right, with themselves and to feel seen and validated in that. And then almost having this like permission slip of like, it's literally in your chart. Like you can't help it. You were born this way. You know what I mean? And then it sort of empowers them to be like, okay, you're right. That is what I really want. And that is what I really need. And then they're able to go forward, ideally, in this sort of like honest and empowered way to then start having more fulfilling experiences in their romantic and sexual connections.
I That's fabulous. Do you suggest, like, people, if they're looking for partners or relationship of some sort, do you suggest what signs are best for some signs, like a lot of astrology does? Like, you're more sexual than them or they're more sexual than you?
Yeah, it's definitely a part of the conversation that happens, right? And sort of inevitably, we are more compatible with other sides versus not. So absolutely, people ask me that question, right? So, what sign should I go, date or try to get with or whatever? And I'll tell them what I see, based on the chart. However, I'm also one of those astrologers that's kind of like a stickler for the fact that we have free will. Right. And it's like, yes, these might be easier connections for you. But if you were to go get with this sort of untraditionally, incompatible, right, like sign, the two of you can still come together and make it work if you really want to. Right. And understanding your wants, needs, and desires and their wants, needs, and desires, and hopefully finding that kind of like middle ground that works for you. I still believe that's possible.
Yeah. I do too. And I'm the free will in my spell working and all that. It's like, it should be, but it can't be, but go there. Do what you
Right.
that free will type go. So, okay, this is funny. So is there a sexiest astrological sign?
Okay, it's just gonna change based on your own birth chart, right? I mean, I think traditionally, a lot of people think about sex, they think about Scorpios, right? And them having this very sort of magnetic, almost like animalistic allure about them, right? So most people, I think, would assign that role to Scorpio, but it just fully depends on you and your chart.
Eh, Um, so is this how adding sex into your astrology, into your work, because you said you got into sex and there was nothing like this out there. There really wasn't. Has this affected your personal spiritual journey or life journey or with other people that you work with? Have you seen, okay, my bedroom is better now, so my everything else is better?
I don't know if I have a great answer to that question. Of course, it has impacted my own life, right? And my own relationships. And ideally, it's also impacting other people and their relationships and therefore, their lives as well. But I wouldn't say I have had somebody come back to me and be like, this changed my entire life. Right. I've had people very much come back to me and say, like, this has changed my love life, and now I found myself this really great partner. But I don't know if it's like it completely overwhelmed somebody's life.
Well, just if it changes your love life, it changes your life. Because, like I said, what does everybody come to for readings for? What is first always relationship?
You're
So if
right.
that's the number one, and if you've completely changed that, I would say you completely changed things. I know you like to put things because you're about empowering and people accessing. How did you put sexuality into something approachable for people? Is it, because we still are a very prudish society, you
Yes,
know?
we are. Yes, we are. You know, I think just to be frank, I've never been somebody who's been scandalized by sex, right? Like it's just the way I am. And because of that, I have also never been I just don't share that same kind of prudish, like clutching your pearls, like shocked, kind of approach to sex. In my mind, like we all have sex, right? By and large. And it's like one of the most like normal, natural things that we do in our lives. And I think it's so important to destigmatize it, right? As much as you can. And so the way I wrote the book outside of my sort of intention around it being inclusive of all genders, all sexualities, all relationship styles. Just kind of, it's almost like the recipe book style, right? Where you can easily flip to all of your different placements in your chart, and you can just read about them. You don't have to go like front to back cover, right, to figure it out. And I also did that intentionally because I know people are going to like take the book and they're going to want to like go to their partner and be like, let's read about your placement, or go to their friend and be like, let's read about yours. And so I think that makes it accessible. Right. And
Right.
it also, it isn't so overt, I will say, about sex. It's like, I mean, there are some things in there, I guess, that are a little overt around sex, but it's more just like, here's how your energy shows up, and here's some things you might like or things you might want to try. And trying to give people real exercises, real tangible things that they can do to like own that part of themselves more. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that was a beautiful answer. So we know that a lot of people in this world, in this country, because again, sex is still taboo, have a lot of personal hangups and issues. Can this book, looking, knowing a little bit about how their planets and how they are, kind of help you through those issues?
That's my hope. Right. That is very much my hope. I think especially like I said, the way I approached it as being maybe more about like how this manifests for you, and not being like go down the street and buy yourself a dildo. Right. Like my hope is that that feels, yes, more accessible, right? And like maybe like safer, right? I think safety is such an important thing around sex and intimacy as well. So it really was my intention to try to create something that does feel like it's not a lot of things in your face all at once, if that makes sense.
That Okay, so take it a little farther. Do you offer tips for folks at reading charts of what if multiple partners or polyamorous dynamics? I have a lot of polyamorous friends. That seems like the hardest relationships to deal with. So
So
to
that
deal with better, you got to look at this partner, that partner.
exactly. Yeah. So that it does get a little complex, pretty fast. The more kind of cooks we add to the kitchen, if you will. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. I recognize that there are innumerable forms of relationships that are out there. And that, I mean, as we go on, there are more and more people that are practicing some form of non monogamy. Right. And so I do talk about that in the book. And I also I talked to so many polyamorous people in my readings as well. So yeah, I definitely try to include that as much as possible as well.
That's amazing. So you're working off someone's birth chart, their natal chart, right? Now, on the day to day, month to month moving of planets, do we change with where the planets are in our sexuality and sensuality as well?
Yeah. So actually, one thing I talk about at the very end of the book is what is known as the progressed chart. Have you ever heard of that? Okay. So it is a timing technique in astrology that says, it takes the first like 90 days after we were born, because most people, don't live much past 90. And it says for every day of like the transiting planets, right? For every day that equals 1 year of your life. So day one, year one, day five, year five, day 28, year 28, day 42, year 42, and so on and so forth. Okay. So the idea is that as the planets like move and change up in the sky and evolve, so do we. Right. And so I won't get into like the super nitty gritty of it, but my point is, in the progressed chart approach, our birth chart changes, right? Kind of according to those transits. And therefore, who we are also evolves and changes, which absolutely includes our sexuality, right? Our style and approach in relationships, the things we want and need. And so I do touch on that at the end of the book, being like, hey, once you feel like you've mastered, your birth chart, you can then go look at your progress chart and see like, how has Venus changed or Mars changed or your sun, and how does that sign that it's in now kind of show up in your own erotic energy and like your approach to sex and love as well.
I think. I love that. So in your book, your new book, I can't wait to read it myself. Do you have a favorite section or maybe even a favorite planetary pairing, um, that works for people or that people should look at?
I think like the best kind of like starting place to understanding sexuality is to look at the two partnership planets, right? So to look at Venus and to look at Mars. And then there's an asteroid in there that I talk about, which is Eros. And that is literally like how we show up and express our physical desires. And it also points to what we sort of find irresistible in the bedroom or from another person. And I think those are definitely like the three that I would start with to really kind of get into like the meat of your own kind of like erotic astrology.
Oh, that's cool. So the asteroid itself affects us differently depending on our sign, right?
Exactly right.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Um, so what's next for you? Do you know? Do you have your next astrological journey or book or you have a very beautiful niche place that this is?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Um, so yes, as a short answer to your question, I am under contract for another book. It too is with Llewellyn. And it's sort of the other thing that I specialize in astrology, which is astrocartography.
Can you talk a little bit about that and tease it?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Are you familiar with astrocartography at all?
No.
Okay. Oh, astrocartography, it too is based off the birth chart, right? Just like everything else in astrology. It is a branch of astrology that was sort of developed back in the 1970s by a man named Jim Lewis. And essentially, what it does is it takes all of your planets and placements in your chart, translates them into latitude and longitude lines, and throws them up on a world map. And the idea is that when we can visit or live under these sort of, various special places on the astro map, that it activates a different part of our chart and therefore a different part of our life. And, that obviously manifests in various different ways according to the line that you're underneath. And that's another thing that I found that people really love when it comes to astrology. I love to travel. So as soon as I found out that astrophotography existed, I mean, I didn't even need to look at it to be hooked. I was like, oh yes, let me learn everything I can about this. And so I would say actually the astrophotography reading is easily the most popular service that I have. People eat it up. So
I love that. So, yeah, and I love to travel and I travel a lot as well. And I know like where I live in Los Angeles, it it seems to be like energetically a love-hate place for people. So I'm sure I do know what that is now that you re-explained it because people I should live here and I live here and I need to
yeah.
figure out how to live there. So that's all done by the natal chart as well. Oh, I can't wait for that book. You're gonna have to come back.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I don't know. I think astrophotography is really fun. Just like I think sexuality is fun. You know what I mean? Like people tend to have a good time talking about both of those things. And so it's just kind of where I've shoehorned myself in, I guess. And those are the two things I spend like pretty much all of my time talking to people about. So
Well,
yeah.
and again, important things. Again, your sex life, your love life, that is what everybody comes first.
Yes.
And, where you live, how you live is very important too. So is that book I know you haven't written it yet, but are you gonna suggest, like, you should visit Greece and not the Bahamas or
So those are definitely things, those are suggestions I make in my reading for people for sure. As far as like the actual book is concerned, it's more of a breakdown of like, here's what this line represents, how it can show up in your life, the different experiences you might have, living or visiting this line. It does explain like, you might be happier visiting this over then, or maybe you should visit this line during this time in your life. Um, Things like that. Like, I think the great part about astrophotography and what makes it work is figuring out what do you want more of in your life, right? Or less of in your life. And being able to point out like, hey, you can go here, 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 and here to get more of that thing that you're looking for. Again, people always want to know like, where can I go to meet a partner? Right. So, I'll point out some places on the map that are really supportive around that. Or people want to know about their career. And so there's obviously places of the map that are good for that too.
Okay, that is good. So that's good. So like if it's gonna be like I need to focus more on business or I need to focus more on health or my my personal happiness and stuff. Oh, I'm loving this.
Yeah. Yeah. But I also like, I always start my readings out with where we live, right? So, like, if you and I were doing a reading, I would talk to you about LA, right? And then we would kind of like go out from there. But I always think it's the most helpful to discuss the astrocartography of where we live because it's the energy that we're experiencing every single day.
Oh, I can't wait. That is good. So okay, that will be coming out from Llewellyn. And right now, before we go, tell everybody I'm sure they're gonna think you're amazing like I do, and I can't wait. I gotta get a reading from her. I've got to figure all of this stuff out. I will be calling. But how can everybody else find you? Where they can find you, your social media, websites, where can they get your books and some other projects you have? Because you've got cards, you've got what do you got?
Yeah. So I'm on Instagram just like everybody else. It is my name, so Aubrey, and then the letter C, how to shell. And then I'm on Threads under the exact same name. I'm on Substack under the exact same name. It's all as long as we've got Aubrey C, how to shell locked down. You can find me pretty much anywhere online. And my website is www.graveyardroses.com, which is my like old business name. I haven't changed it yet, but that's where it is right now. And then, yeah, so I've got Stellar Sex that just came out. Like all of these things I'm about to name, you can find them anywhere books are sold. Okay. So like pick your favorite place, favorite online, store, whatever. They're all there. Okay. So I've got Stellar Sex, the Cosmic Symposium, as we discussed, which again, that's more about the actual planets, right? And they're sort of like archetypal, mythological journeys, energies, representation. And I have the Oracle of Pluto deck, which is an oracle deck. It's 55 cards. And that is literally designed with Pluto in mind to help you on your journey of transformation and life at rebirth, getting in touch with those kind of like deeper, darker, shadowy, things in your life. And again, it's undefined empowerment. And then yes, in 2027, I believe early 2027 is when my next book will be out.
Yay. Okay. Well, we will wait for you guys. Like her, follow her, check her out, check out her website, get these books, enjoy your sex life all the way around, and figure out where you want to live and have sex. There we go.
Yeah, perfect. All
Th-
right. Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Aubrey. We will see you again.